Live from the Mothy Center on UWGB's campus, WBAY presents the 8th Congressional Debate.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mothy Center on the campus of the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. I am your moderator, Cammie Rapson with WBAY TV-2. Tonight, we welcome both candidates for the 8th Congressional District in front of a live audience. That's your Folks, we have a full crowd here, and so we're really excited to see it. Both candidates will actually appear twice on the ballot this November. First, in a special election to fill the remaining 2 months of the term after Representative Mike Gallagher resigned this spring, and then to take the full 2-year term that is up for grabs beginning in January of 2025. Now, the 8th Congressional District includes roughly 750,000 people. The boundaries reach as far north as Marinette County to the western edges of Shawano and Waupaca counties, east to include Kewaunee and Door counties, and to the south including much of Calumet County and a small section of northern Winnebago County. So now, let's welcome the candidates. We have Dr. Kristin Lyerly, a Democrat. She's an obstetrician and gynecologist, and Mr. Tony Wied, a Republican who is a local businessman. And our panelists tonight, joining me on either side, include Jason Zimmerman, Chief Political Reporter for WBAY TV-2, and Jesse Lind. He is a Politics and Community Reporter for the Green Bay Press-Gazette. So thank you both for being here. We also have 2 college students here tonight who will each ask one question to both of the candidates, and I will introduce them during this debate. So here is the format for tonight's debate. A panelist will direct a question to that candidate. That candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. The opposing candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. Each candidate will then have 60 seconds to expand on their answers, and then we'll end with a 15-second final comment from the candidate who received the question. Both Mr. Wied and Dr. Lyerly agreed to this format and these timing restrictions. So we look forward to engaging discourse, of course, and some in-depth responses. So we're going to begin with 1-minute opening statements, and we will begin with Mr. Tony Wied.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you to the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay, for hosting this great event tonight. Thank you to our moderators. My name is Tony Wied, and I was born right in Lincoln, Nebraska. My parents are from Green Bay and went to college. My dad played football at the University of Nebraska. A month later, moved back to this area, so I've been a lifelong resident of Brown County. I grew up in Ashwaubenon. I went to public schools through 8th grade. Then I decided to go to a great Catholic school right here in Green Bay called Notre Dame Academy. Then I decided to continue with my education, and I went to another great Catholic institution called St. Norbert College right in De Pere. I've been here my entire life. I met the love of my life, Angela, my last year in college. We got married a year later. We then decided to have 4 amazing children within 5 years. We also decided to get into our own business, and we got into the convenience store, gas station business, a local business called Dino Stop. So we work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and our number one job always, as parents, was to be good spouses and great parents. And that was always my number one job, is to be a good father. And I really worked hard in my business to make sure that we could provide for our children. Right now, I have this great opportunity to be here tonight and to serve, hopefully, with your vote. And I want to earn that, this great country of ours. I love this country, and I'm looking forward to serving each and every one of you.
Thank you, Mr. Wied. Kristin Lyerly, Dr. Kristin Lyerly, you may also do your opening statements.
Thank you. As Tony said, thank you to Bob Pine, the Mothy Center, you all for being here, and you all for coming in tonight and being part of something that we have not had in the 8th Congressional District. Thank you, Tony, for making this possible. I'm just a kid from Kaukauna. I grew up across the street from this guy. I'm also a mom and an OBGYN doctor. I'm a 6th generation Wisconsinite. All of my dad's family worked at Philmany, the paper mill in Kaukauna. My mom's side, they're dairy farmers from Calumet and Fond du Lac County. I'm a 1st generation college student, and I have fought hard for everything that I've earned. And my North Star has always been service to others. And it's that public service that brings me here today. I think what you're going to see tonight is a pretty distinct contrast between someone who has a life of public service and someone who recently discovered public service this spring when this congressional seat opened up. So I look forward to continuing this conversation and to sharing with you why I will be the best option to serve you here in northeastern Wisconsin in Congress.
Thank you both for your opening statements. And we're going to get right to the questions. And panelist Jason Zimmerman will begin with our first question directed to Mr. Tony Wied. You will have 90 seconds to respond to Jason's question after he asks.
Thanks, Camby. I want to start first with the issue of inflation and specifically the impact it's had on affordable housing. According to Rent.com, Wisconsin is now in the top 10 states in the country for steep rent increases. You might also be familiar with Wisconsin 211. Among people seeking assistance at call centers in Brown County and the Fox cities, housing assistance has now replaced health care as the #1 issue going back 2 years. During this time, it's generated more than 10,000 calls for assistance. Many who rent are middle to lower income and live paycheck to paycheck. It is a financial hardship. How do you assure voters that this trend will not continue into next year and the year after with continual rent increases as the cost of housing goes up? Mr. Wied, you can go first on this question.
Well, we see during this current administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris inflation that we haven't seen in 40 years. And unfortunately, inflation is really a tax. And it's a tax that affects the poor and the middle class the most. It really doesn't affect those that have a lot of money. It affects the poor and the middle class. And again, it is a tax. And where does it come from? It comes from the reckless spending that we continue to see in Washington and during this administration. Every single year, we're going further into debt as a country. Right now, we're at a debt of $35 trillion. Every 100 days, we're going further into debt, another $1 trillion. Every second, our Federal Reserve is printing $80,000 and inserting it into this economy. And what does that do? That makes our dollars worth less. And again, that comes from the reckless spending in Washington right now. And I was in the small business and we led teams in our convenience store businesses. And we worked with folks that were on their second and third chance. And that's what I love to do day in and day out, was mentor and coach folks. And I saw how hard it was for people to live and be able to afford rent and be able to afford those things. And I love seeing people be successful, coming into our business, working their way up into management, and then maybe even moving on and moving into another job where they continue to get better with their career. So again, this is a reckless spending issue, and we need to stop it, and I will stop it.
Dr. Lyerly, 90 seconds for your response.
Thank you. Yeah, there's no question. Inflation has been a giant burden for all of us. 2 years ago, it was at 9%. It was really high, and we all saw the price of everything go up. Housing in particular, it's very tricky to buy a house nowadays. It's very tricky to rent nowadays. When my husband and I bought our first house back in the day, many of you may have had this experience. We really wanted a house. We knew exactly what we wanted. It wasn't that expensive. It was a starter home, but there was no way we could afford it. My mom happened to pass away and leave us a little bit of money, and that's the only way we were able to make a down payment. You shouldn't have to lose a family member in order to buy a house in this country, the wealthiest country on earth. We need programs for first-time home buyers. We need federal incentives for developers and builders so that they will put their time and energy into local projects that will get these renters into homes, because home ownership is a step in upward mobility. It helps people build their families, get an education, live their lives. And another really creative idea is federal lands. There's an option in many communities where we can use federal lands for public development. There are many things that we can do as members of Congress that will help to take the pressure off of the housing market and get first-time home buyers into their homes.
Jason would like to redirect on the 60 seconds.
Yes, I'm just going to redirect slightly. Obviously, Mr. Wied, you've identified that this is a problem. My question to you is, what would you propose to fix it? And my question on your follow-up, Dr. Lyerly, the biggest obstacle to affordable housing for a lot of communities is zoning ordinances. And a lot of these local communities push back against the notion of affordable housing. So how do you create an incentive for them to accept affordable housing, whether it's with grants or other means? Because right now, that is an obstacle in many of these communities. And we'll go back to Mr. Wied for that response to my first question.
Well, I think it comes down to opportunity and making sure that we give the businesses and the employers and folks that own their own businesses opportunities to continue to thrive. And I believe that through tax cuts and various other measures for everybody in order to keep more money in your pocket, in order to grow the economy. And quite frankly, I think right now we're a country that we need to continue to look into energy dominance as a country. We have natural resources under the ground right here where we can absolutely explore. We have liquid fuels with gasoline and diesel and biodiesel and things like that that will actually stimulate this economy. So this comes down to a marketplace, and we need to continue to provide opportunities for people to continue to grow in their careers and ultimately be able to afford what they need for a home.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
I hear you, Jason. I hear this from my neighbors. I've heard it in every place that I've lived. We don't want that kind of housing. We want more expensive houses. We want, I mean, the property taxes are important to your community. You want to pull in wealthier folks who can help to make your community more wealthy. That supports your public schools. That supports so much of the stuff that you can do. But the truth is there's a way to do this. We've seen this done creatively with mixed-use developments where people can rent, people can own, people can shop in their own neighborhoods. There are places where there are bike lanes and sidewalks so neighbors can get out and talk to each other. Lots of different options in these creative solutions that put people in homes. But the tricky part is getting leaders locally to buy in. And that's something that, as a member of Congress and someone who is deeply invested in community, again, from this area, I can be influential in helping people understand the necessity and the benefits. And we can also create federal incentives for these kinds of mixed-use communities.
Mr. Wied, you have 15 seconds to respond. Final word.
Well, exactly. And I've met with various other employers in this area, whether it's in the meatpacking industry and so forth, where they're partnering with local officials like the city of Green Bay in building residential areas for their team members. And I think this really continues to be a business type of situation where people are solving it and developing the areas that make sense and providing that affordable housing for people.
Okay. Thank you both. Jesse Lynn now has a question addressed to Dr. Kristin Lyerly, and you will have 90 seconds to respond.
Dr. Lyerly, you said in previous interviews that you support expanding a federal child tax credit, lowering taxes on the middle class, while raising taxes for more wealthy Americans. These are also core pillars of Vice President Harris's economic plan that she recently expanded to 82 pages. The Wharton School found that by 2054, Harris's policies would reduce the GDP by 3.9%, reduce average wages by 3.3%, while adding $2 trillion to the national debt. Should Wisconsinites and Americans accept these outcomes in exchange for a modest increase in their incomes, as the analysis finds?
That's a great question, Jesse, and thank you for that. That's 2054. That's 30 years into the future. So how often do you set a plan and you stay on that course for 30 years? We're going to see changes in administration. We're going to see changes in energy production and environment and business and taxation. I mean, the country is not going to stay on one course. So I think that's a good plan for now. I think it's solid for now. I think it will likely change in the future. But what I do know is we've got to change what we are doing in this country to support the middle class. We are the tax cuts that President Trump passed in his last presidency really benefited the very wealthy and corporations, but the little guy bared the brunt of it. I mean, what did you get, $100 out of that? But corporations and wealthy folks made out like bandits. We've got to focus on the middle class and give them programs that help them not only get into houses and afford food, but also attain an education if that's what they desire, or have a family. I've had to make that decision. I left the workforce to stay home with my oldest two sons when they were little because we couldn't afford to put them in childcare so I could stay in the workforce. It shouldn't be like that. And we don't have child care providers because we're not paying our child care providers. We're not valuing the people who are taking care of our most vulnerable population. We have to take steps to improve the status of the middle class.
Mr. Wied, you have 90 seconds.
You know, as we continue to look at what's happening to people right now with this economy, it continues to be the new tax right now is inflation. You know, we're at a point right now with President Trump's tax cuts. They were effective. It helped stimulate the economy during his administration. And President Biden and Kamala Harris kept those tax cuts in place. But they're at risk of coming due next year. And I believe we need to extend those tax cuts in order to keep more money in everybody's pocket. But as I continue to look at our economy and talking to folks, whether it's business leaders, teachers, what have you, inflation is really what is the new tax right now. You know, people are, you know, the government's saying that we're paying 20% more in the grocery store, but people are also saying 30, 40, even 50% more for goods that you normally buy. And again, that is the problem right now. Prices continue to rise, and it's from the reckless spending that we continue to see in Washington. And we cannot have that. I have been in business, a small family business that my wife and I both ran. And it was very difficult. And we had to go line by line in our budget every single day to make sure that we were watching expenses as they creeped up. And it's no different than each and every one of you in your own households. You have to look at every single budget. And that's what I will bring to Congress. We have to have a balanced budget. We have to move towards less spending, because that is the ultimate tax in what is hurting the poor and the middle class.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
I'm not at all surprised to hear my opponent's support for these tax cuts because he and his friends benefited from them. But I can tell you that I know many of you didn't because I hear you telling me that. They're not helping you. You deserve better. Let's talk about inflation because my opponent keeps coming back to that. 50% of the price rise in inflation is due to corporate greed. Those prices haven't come back down as inflation has eased, but corporations are making record profits, not off of my opponent's back, off of your back. I yield.
Mr. Wied, 60 seconds.
Well, look, I'm not going to attack all of the businesses that are in our district. Our district is full of small businesses, family businesses, and bigger companies that employ each and every one of us. And we get to choose where we want to work. And just remember, a lot of these businesses are farmers, or they're manufacturing and the like. But again, the real issue that we continue to have with this economy is the reckless spending. And that is something that we, as a member of Congress, can actually do. Our job in the House of Representatives is one of two things. One is to oversee the agencies that we have in our government, and the other is to present spending bills in the lower House of Representatives. And that is something that we absolutely have to do because, again, that is a tax on the poor. And I think tax cuts, they're not tax cuts. It's leaving money in people's pockets. And we need to continue to find ways to keep more money in your pocket so that you can decide and work and find solutions.
Final word from Dr. Lyerly.
Yeah, I would say with respect to the biggest job that Congress has, it's to pass a budget. And that's something that Congress has not been able to do. And we just last week were able to get another continuing resolution passed. Unfortunately, my opponent opposes continuing resolutions and would shut down the government. And I look forward to continuing that conversation about how we would have police officers, Border Patrol agents, military working unpaid because of that bad decision.
We now have a question from Shania Johnson, a senior at St. Norbert College. Please come up. She will address Mr. Tony Wied for a 90-second response afterwards. Go ahead.
Many students are struggling right now with the high cost of a college education. What will you do to make higher learning more affordable? Also, would either of you support student loan relief? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, thank you very much for the question. I have 4 children that are currently in college right now, 3 in undergrad and 1 in graduate school. So I see the costs of college and how expensive it is and how difficult it is right now. And I think we need to find a solution, a better solution for the cost of college. But that comes down to, from a state level and from the college level, and finding ways to reduce costs in their operations at the college level. I look at universities like the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay that continue to grow and thrive, being the 3rd largest university here in Wisconsin, and finding ways of going out and getting donations and getting involved with the community and having the business leaders continue to fund the organization here in this university. So again, I think we need to continue to lean into the marketplace. I think we need to continue to have increased competition. And you know, it's very difficult from a student loan perspective. And I don't think that we can just give student loan forgiveness for people that go to college when that wouldn't help those that are going to tech school and going on and learning the trades, which I think we need to open that up more for people to get into the trades as well.
Dr. Lyerly, 90 seconds.
One of the fun things about my opponent and I is that we both have 4 sons. They are all about the same age, which is kind of hilarious. I too have kids in college, they're not quite so close together, but I hear you. College is expensive, and it's a lot more expensive than it was when I went to college. And not only is the tuition more expensive, but the financing is terribly expensive. It shouldn't cost more to go to college than it does to buy a car, right? This is your education. This is an investment in your future. College should be something that is available to everyone, and not just 4-year colleges, but grad school, trade schools, all of the other options that will educate people so that they can go out into the workforce, go into the trades, contribute to society. So yes, we need better programs, we need lower interest rates, we need more opportunities for students. With regards to student loan forgiveness, I just have to tell you, I'm still paying off my student loans. Most of my student loans actually went to paying for childcare, which is like a double negative right there. Student loans are hard, and we have to do better. We need a way to forgive these student loans that people have accumulated at 7-8% interest when they're not getting the value out of that education of the investment that they've put into it. I think I am very interested in pursuing this, not for everybody. I'm willing to pay my loans. I'm happy to do that. But for many students, they deserve better.
Mr. Wied, 60 seconds.
Well, my sons also have student debt and, from loans, and it's very difficult. And I think we need to, as a community, and we're starting to see this in some of our local communities where high schools are leaning into the trades and into the technical schools. And I think that's very important because right now we need a workforce in the trades, whether that's electricians and plumbers and so forth, and really helping them find a different path. Because it's not for everybody. A university or a college isn't for everybody, but I'm passionate about continuing to lean into that and helping schools and local districts, work with people to say, hey, look, it's okay to go into a trade. You can make a great living, whether it's a plumber or electrician, or maybe it's a welder, or you get into a union, a steam fitter, and those types of things. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all. I am concerned with the prices of student loan, like the actual interest rates obviously are way too high. And so I think there needs to be something done with that to make that more affordable.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
Thank you. It's not just okay to go into the trades. It's awesome to go into the trades. Please go into the trades if that's what you want to do, because we need you. We need electricians, we need plumbers, we need folks of all different specialties, different talents. That's how we build community around here. Importantly, though, I want to draw your attention to something that my opponent said recently in a number of different interviews. He would eliminate the Department of Education. By eliminating the Department of Education, that would eliminate a number of funding streams for students. And not only that, but it would drive states and local municipalities into chaos as they're trying to backfill and figure out how they are going to provide services, especially services for the most vulnerable students in their schools. I think that's a big mistake.
Final 15 seconds, Mr. Wied.
So the Department of Education, for me, gets a failing grade. I believe in local. I believe that you should have the control to run your schools here locally. And I do not believe in the federal government teaching our children. They are not good at it. We have federal bureaucrats continuing to get involved in our children's education. The money should stay here and not go to the federal government.
Thank you. Thank you both. Shania, thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Jason Zimmerman will now ask a question of Dr. Kristin Lyerly with your 90-second response.
Thanks, Cami. Vice President Kamala Harris spent time today at the U.S.-Mexico border. This is her second trip she's made there since taking office. Harris has campaigned on supporting that killed bipartisan border bill, saying that she would sign it if passed by Congress, whereas President Trump supports funding the wall again that he's promised to build in his first term. Would either of you support the funding of that wall or the signing of a similar border bill that was just presented to Congress if it were to be presented again next year? And what's your message to those in the meatpacking and agriculture businesses here in Northeast Wisconsin who depend on a lot of these foreign-born workers to fill job positions that they need to be able to operate? And Dr. Lyerly, I'll let you start with this question.
You hit the nail on the head. We need immigrants who are here legally to help out in our agriculture industry, to help out in meat packing, to help out in nursing homes. They fulfill a critical role in society. But there is a crisis at the border, and this is one of the biggest concerns that I hear when I'm out talking to future constituents. People are worried about crime. They're worried about drugs. They're worried that this is not going to get solved, and they're worried that government is putting politics over people, especially when we had this bipartisan border bill that was put together by some of the most conservative and some of the most liberal members of the Senate. It wasn't perfect, but it put 1,500 new Border Patrol agents into play. It also created a better path, a more efficient path to citizenship. It stemmed the flow of fentanyl across the border, which is something that, as a physician who takes care of people who are dealing with the opioid crisis because of what's happening here, I see the effect on them and their families. I promise you, as your next congressperson, I will do everything in my power to stop the flow of fentanyl across the border.
Mr. Wied, 90 seconds.
Well, unfortunately, during this current administration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the border has completely been wide open. During President Trump's term, the border was doing well. He was working towards a border wall. We had the Remain in Mexico policy, which didn't allow for folks to cross the border and then apply for asylum. The border officials and ICE were being properly funded. We were having great success. In fact, the most success that any president has had in recent history, although many presidents have said they were going to close the border. You can't have a country without control of your border. And I go around and I've met in all the different meatpacking plants. I've met with agriculture farmers, both large, or including large, medium, and small dairy farms. We're the third largest congressional district for dairy, and it's very important. And I'm listening to what they're doing and finding solutions for workforce. And I do believe that we need to find a new way for immigration, something that allows a little bit longer from a work permit perspective so that they can employ those folks. Look, I'm an immigrant. I come from immigrants. We've been here for generations here in Northeast Wisconsin, so I believe in legal immigration. But right now, we have to close this border. This administration right now, it is a tragedy what they're doing and having this be completely wide open. Kamala Harris has been in charge of it, and it is wide open, and it is havoc. In talking with sheriffs and DAs and judges right in this community, it is happening right now, and we need to get the border closed down.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
So let's talk about immigrants and why they come here. As my opponent mentioned, most of us came from immigrants at some point in our lineage. They come here for lots of different reasons, and when they get here, what happens? They get stuck in a cumbersome system that is incredibly difficult to navigate. For years, they are in situations where they may have a work permit, but they don't have a driver's license. How are they supposed to get to work? They're put in impossible situations. This border bill starts to solve that problem. It helps to heal these issues and get people where they need to go so they can do what they need to do. And I guess the question that I would have for my opponent is, what about the border bill did you not like?
You have 60 seconds to respond.
The border bill didn't go far enough, like the results we were having during the Trump administration. It was effective. The policies were effective. The Remain in Mexico policy, finishing the border wall, things like funding properly and giving the manpower to border officials and ICE. That was effective. This bill does not go far enough. We need to close this border down, find an effective immigration policy.
15 seconds for a final word.
That effective immigration policy is sitting there just waiting to be signed, but we all know that the people who pulled my opponent's strings said no. They said no because they want to use it for politics. They want to use it to induce fear, to divide us, to scare us, and it's effective. And that's why we all need to know what this bill means and what it can do to actually solve this problem.
So you had an effective policy for those 4 years, and that was completely undone on day one during this presidency.
This is a good place to take a break. We are going to take a 2-minute break. The first section of this congressional debate is over. We'll take a little break and we'll resume the questions in 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the 8th Congressional Debate. You're watching on WBAY TV-2. We're on the campus of University of Wisconsin, Green Bay at the Mothie Center in front of a live audience. We had a great first half of that debate. On stage, Mr. Tony Wied, the Republican candidate, and Dr. Kristin Lyerly, the Democratic candidate. We're going to go right back to the questions, and we'll begin the second half of this debate with panelist Jesse Lynn, political and community reporter with the Green Bay Press-Gazette, directing the question to Mr. Tony Wied with 90 seconds to respond.
Mr. Wied, you've reiterated multiple times that you believe abortion is an issue best left to the states. What then should abortion policy be in Wisconsin?
Well, thank you. So, you know, look, Angela and I have 4 amazing children, and it is the greatest joy of our life. And the Supreme Court made the decision that the right of abortion is within the state's hands. Where it was before, it is now. And I believe that it should continue to stay as a state's right issue.
Dr. Lyerly, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. We know without a doubt that people across the country and in Northeast Wisconsin believe that we all should have the freedom to make our own choices about our own bodies. That is undeniable. Saying that this is a decision for the states is a cop-out. What that means is that in states like Arkansas and Idaho, where there are no exceptions for rape or incest, that tells me that you're okay with that. That tells me that in states with bans where mothers die at a rate 3 times greater than in states without bans, you're okay with that. It also tells me that in states like Texas, where they have a major abortion ban, infants die, babies die at a rate 12% higher than in states without bans. You're okay with that?
If you're so passionate about this, why don't you run for state assembly like you did once before?
I am going
The
to. I'm going
issue
to
is within the state's hands. It has been, and it is now.
Jesse,
I understand your passion, and I would encourage you to
Jesse
go
would
forward
like
in
to
this state.
clarify. Jesse would like to clarify the question to Mr. Wied.
Mr. Wied, I would like to ask you again, what then should abortion policy be in Wisconsin?
Look, I'm running for the United States House of Representatives. Our job is to present spending bills and oversee the agencies at the federal level. I am not for continuing to add more power to the federal government. We live in the United States of America. That was never the intent of our Constitution, to be sorting these things out at the federal level. This is a state issue. It will continue to be a state issue. The Democratic majority didn't bring it to the federal level. It won't be at the federal level. So that's not on my plate. I am going to continue to work hard on the things that I can control in the United States House of Representatives.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
Again, a cop-out. We all know the person who pulls Tony Wied's strings is proud of taking Roe v. Wade down. And yeah, I'm passionate about it because it's killing my patients. What's next? Contraception? IVF? Those are things that we're dealing with on a federal level. Where do you stand on those issues that are also deeply personal medical issues? Because I can tell you, in this room, there are people, women and men, who have experienced complicated reproductive health issues, and they have needed help. And that help will not be available if Tony Wied is representing you in Congress.
15 seconds.
Well, I believe in families, and I believe, and I'll talk to young people, I think it's a great idea to have children. I love my children. They're the greatest joy of my life. I think in vitro fertilization is a good thing. But again, this issue that you're so passionate about, again, why aren't you running for state assembly or state senate?
We're going to go to the next question. We have a question from Carter. Go. He is a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. He will direct a question to Dr. Kristin Lyerly with a 90-second response. Dr. Lyerly.
With mental issues being such an issue, what steps are you going to expand services for mental health and support systems for them?
I thank you for asking that question. As a physician, I not only deal with the physical health of my patients, but also the mental health of my patients. And we know that in this country right now, people are struggling with mental health issues like never before. In fact, recently, the Surgeon General issued a report that said nearly half of all parents are struggling with their mental health. They're so stressed out they can't even get through the day. So there's no question, this is a huge issue. How do we solve it? Well, in Congress, funding. What are we funding? Mental health treatment, training for professionals. We have a profound physician and healthcare provider crisis in this country. It is worse in places that are rural. We're seeing mental health, we're seeing farmer suicide at record levels. You think farmers is these big, burly, solid folks. They're dying because their mental health issues are not being treated. So yes, we need to shine a light on mental health, and we also need to make it okay. I feel as though in recent times we've been able to talk more about mental health, but more efforts to get us to be able to connect with each other, because in that counseling environment, that helps, maybe sometimes more than other treatments.
Mr. Wied, 90
Well,
seconds.
there's no doubt mental health issues are a crisis here in this country, and it's something that I have faced, my family has faced, whether it's friends and family that have dealt with alcohol and drug abuse and helping them overcome those issues. And right now we are in a polarizing world, and we need to come together and heal as a country. And I will be a great role model, whether I'm in schools and talking to young kids. Be good to each other. I think bullying is a major crisis right now in schools. And I just cannot wait to go in and talk to them about, look, no more bullying. It is really bad for you. You'll regret it down the line. You need to be good to each other and love each other. And I think ultimately we need to continue to come together, have a sense of belonging, get back to our communities and our roots and our family units. I'm in favor of funding anything to help with the mental health crisis from a federal level. I will make sure of it, and I think we need to do a much better job.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
There is a group of folks who specifically need help from the federal government to take care of their mental health, and that is our veterans. We lose 22 veterans a day to suicide in this country. These are the true patriots who have put in their time, who have given their hearts to this country, and we have abandoned them. My cousin, my classmate, committed suicide earlier this year, and it was because he couldn't get access to the care that he needed. As a result of that, his family obviously continues to suffer, we all do, but his daughter stepped up, and another friend of ours stepped up from Oconto. And they asked if they could create a group in support of my campaign, Veterans for Kristin, because they know that as a physician who understands what's happening with our mental health crisis, that I can be part of the solution.
Mr. Wied, 60 seconds.
You know, in meeting with veterans that have been in these recent wars, whether it's in Afghanistan, the Gulf War, and so forth, they're really struggling, no question about it, with the approach at the VA system that isn't working for everybody. And so I believe that we should have right to try. I think we need to look at alternative options for folks like veterans within the VA system and also with, you know, in our own system in the government. And I think they need to be able to have access to other alternatives rather than just the standard care right now. And there's great veterans groups right now that I've been meeting with that have other alternatives that they want to have be available at the VA. And I will absolutely support Right to Try so that they can get the care they need.
15 seconds for final word, Dr. Lyerly.
I think we need to focus our efforts on the care that they're already not getting, the basic fundamental health care that they are being denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Carter,
Thank
thank
you
you for your question. Now we go back to Jason Zimmerman, Chief Political Reporter for WBAY TV, directing the question to Mr. Tony Wied with 90 seconds to respond.
Recently, we've seen politics become a lot more polarizing. The rhetoric used by campaigns on both sides of the aisle will typically use words like dangerous, threat, and extreme. It's led to a lack of bipartisanship in Washington, mainly because neither party wants to give the other party a win politically. What would you do to change this? And what would you say to moderate voters tonight to show that maybe there's something in your own party platform that you don't necessarily agree with or have concerns about, proving to us that you have the ability to work across the aisle? Mr. Wied, we'll start with you first.
Well, having this opportunity to be a representative in the House of Representatives is an honor. And I will take the approach that I've always taken when running my business, raising my family, and conducting myself over 48 years. I'll take a pragmatic approach. I'm not one to scream and attack people. I'm one to attack problems. And the better I was at solving problems day in and day out, whether it was in my business, whether it was in my personal life, whether it was helping friends. And that's the approach that I'll take to the House of Representatives, because right now it is too polarizing. The House of Representatives and the Congress in general, they're not getting anything done. They're spending time just trying to win arguments day in and day out. And that is not me. It's never been me. I am one that will absolutely sit down. I will work with anyone, whether they're a Democrat, a Republican, male, female, whatever God you believe in. To me, it doesn't matter. What matters is your character. And I did that when I was leading in our business. We worked with folks from all different races and all different economic backgrounds. And we loved each other. And you have to show more love towards each other and actually work together to solve problems, because there's too much at stake right now in this country. You know, we're seeing the potential for a world war in various areas around our world. We're seeing the border be completely overrun, instability everywhere. The political system is polarizing. I will be the exact opposite of that. I will just solve problems and do my job and work for you.
Dr. Lyerly, 90 seconds for your response.
I agree. Let's show more love, right? Wouldn't you love to see more love? Yeah, but this is a really tough environment. We're at a place right now where Congress is so divided. They are the least effective Congress since the Civil War. And why? Because they've got this take my ball and go home mentality instead of sitting down, having a beer, figuring it out, like the bipartisan border bill. That's a great example of something that could have happened but didn't because of politics, because of this severe division. You know, I grew up here as a Republican, not a card-carrying Republican, but I always voted for Republicans. I never voted for a Democrat until I was probably in my 30s. And I never became a Democrat until right before I ran for office. I'm an independent. I'm an independent thinker. I'm somebody who listens to people, just like I do in the office when I'm talking to a patient. I listen. I hear, what is your problem? We talk about options, and then we figure out what's the best solution for you. It's the same strategy in a community. We share values. We have a common culture, and we're all different, And that's the beauty of a community like this, because we bring our different opinions together and we create magic with it.
60 seconds, Mr.
Well,
Wied.
there's no doubt we're lacking leadership, and we see that right now in the administration with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that causes chaos. We see this with this lack of leadership. We see the chaos in the Middle East and in Eastern Europe. We see the chaos here in this country, whether it's in the border. We see the instability that is going on. And again, I am not somebody that is going to just go and try to win arguments or continue to scream and holler and just try to be somebody that gets attention. I never have been. We've lived our life in a private way. We ran a very small family business that was very difficult to run against very big competitors, but we didn't complain. We just worked hard day in and day out. We're a good employer, and we just solved problems day in and day out so that we could be a good leader and a good employer for our team. And that's what I'll bring to the House of Representatives, because we have way too many problems right now. And I'll bring a good, strong leadership approach and be a good role model for each and every one of you.
Dr. Lyerly, 60 seconds.
Tammy Baldwin tells a wonderful story about how she got the Respect for Marriage Act passed. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but Dobbs happened, Roe v. Wade fell, and things were dark. At least in my world, they were very, very dark. And Clarence Thomas wrote this opinion where he said, same amendment also is the thing that makes gay marriage legal. And Tammy Baldwin, in this polarizing environment, said, I got to protect gay marriage, and here's how I'm going to do it. I have relationships with this person and that person and this person and that person, and I know these things about them, and I'm going to leverage those relationships. I don't care if they're Republicans, Democrats, Independents. It doesn't matter, because we are looking for common ground so we can do some good on behalf of the American people. And do you remember what happened? She got it done. That's how I will lead when I'm in Congress.
Final comments, 15 seconds, Mr. Wied.
Well, it's great to hear, and ultimately, that's what we need now more than ever. And we have to continue to realize that in the House of Representatives, we have a role to play. Our job is to present spending bills, which are way too high right now. We're spending ourselves off of a fiscal cliff, and we need to oversee the agencies. But again, I will be a great role model for this district.
Jesse Lynn with a question for Dr. Lyerly. 90 seconds to respond.
Dr. Lyerly, rural Wisconsinites are hospitalized for heart disease and die more frequently from cancer, strokes, and unintentional injuries than their urban counterparts, according to the University of Wisconsin's Public Health Institute. You often practice in rural communities as an OBGYN and said in a recent interview that you believe, quote, our healthcare system is for profit, not for people. Based on that premise, you said that you, quote, personally would love to see every American have access to quality, affordable healthcare. What do you have in mind that would get to that outcome, and do private insurers play a role?
We have a complicated healthcare system. And I have to say the data that you used comes from the University of Wisconsin. I'm a proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine and Public Health. And I have to emphasize that every time, because it was the first medical school that added public health as an initiative, because the health of the public affects your individual health. And that's what we see in these rural communities. We see people who can't get to the doctor. There is no doctor there. They don't have a car. They don't have the money to pay for their health care. It's a crisis, and it's a huge reason why our outcomes are poorer in rural areas, like the area where I work. So how do we fix it? Do we just wipe the slate clean and start over? I mean, we've been building this healthcare system for over 100 years, and it's gotten this way because of the way it was built. And the way we have to fix it is by working within the system. The ACA was a wonderful step in the right direction, and I support the ACA. I have been very vocal in my support for the ACA. I am on the exchange myself as an independent contractor, which is kind of like being a small business person. That was a step in the right direction. But then we saw Republicans pulling back on provisions of the ACA, making it less available, less affordable. We need to go in the other direction, and that's a good start.
Mr. Wied, 90 seconds.
Well, there's no question that the cost of health care is rising at a rate that is unsustainable. And I saw too, as a business owner, we had to, we were able to provide health insurance. And the cost for my health insurance was sky high. And the amount that we had to pay to have insurance for our team members was extremely high. It was a very big burden. We're continuing to see employers have to pay 15 to over 30% increases for the cost of health care. And now I'm on the exchange as well. And it costs me $1,000 a month for an $8,000 deductible. And that is the way it is right now. So I am going to do everything in my power to drive those prices down, but we need to look at actual solutions in order to drive those down. We need to have increased competition in the marketplace right now. We're continuing to see basically these networks are continuing to join forces and sell to each other or buy each other up. We have less competition right now in healthcare than ever. And it's going to continue to get worse and worse. And those are things that we need to do from a congressional level to stop that. We also need to have transparency in pricing. You know, if you go to the doctor right now, you don't even know what the cost is. And God forbid you have to go to the hospital. If you go to the hospital, get your treatment, you come home, you end up getting 3, 4, or even 5 invoices, and you don't even know what they are. That has to change. And we can do that in the lower house, in the House of Representatives, and I will.
Jesse would like to follow up on that question.
Dr. Lyerly, I'd just like to clarify your position on private insurance in the marketplace for health insurance. Because you have said that the healthcare system is for profit, do you believe private insurers then have a role to play in the health insurance market?
They do at this point. They do. And that was a big part of the ACA. I think that as we continue to move towards ensuring that we are universally insured so that every American has access to quality, affordable health care, we'll see how things evolve. Just like your question earlier about 2054. You know, that's a long way into the future. I'm sure that the people who started putting health insurance together 100 years ago could not have envisioned what we're dealing with right now. But the truth of the matter is, we have the most expensive health care on the planet. And our outcomes are dismal compared to our peer countries, especially when it comes to moms and babies. Why? Because of inefficiencies, because of things like prior authorizations, things that prevent people from getting the treatment, the medications that we prescribe to our patients, that we've discussed and we've picked out and we know it's the right thing, and then the insurance company comes in and says no and creates a barrier. And there are many others.
Mr. Wade, 60 seconds.
Well, there's no doubt. And again, you know, from an insurance perspective, people are paying way too much for their health care premiums and way too much when they have to go to the doctor. And we need to fix that, again, with increasing competition, providing more transparency, and decentralizing these big institutions that are continuing to form into one big institution that we have to go to for the hospital. But I think it also begs that we need to talk about the health of our country. I think right now, from a health standpoint and from the federal government and the guidelines, we are sicker than we've ever been. And I am passionate about making us a healthier country and looking into exactly what is causing all of these issues. Why we're continuing to have diabetes at such a high rate. Why we're continuing to have all of these health issues, chronic issues that we have here in America that maybe aren't happening in other countries. What is exactly causing that? I'm passionate about that. I will work on that because health is so important, and prevention is going to be the biggest issue that I think we can tackle.
15 seconds, Dr. Lyerly.
I have lots of ideas. Let's offline about that.
That'd be great. I'm in.
You know, one thing I didn't mention is prescription drugs. Prescription drugs are too expensive. They are more expensive in this country than in any other country, and the ability for Medicare to negotiate, capping insulin at $35 a month is literally a lifesaver for seniors on Medicare. More of that.
I want to address Social Security really quick. It is projected that the trust fund could run out as early as 2035. That is just 11 years from now. The program will continue collecting, but it will only pay out about 83% of benefits, and then that number drops to 73%. This would increase the number of people who collect Social Security that would be living in poverty by 50%. When does Congress address this issue? And is the solution raising the minimum age to collect benefits, or is it eliminating benefits from people above a certain income level? And Dr. Lyerly, you can start with this question.
Social Security is something that we've been paying in our whole lives and we expect it to be there for us. It is maybe the #1 issue that I hear from seniors. Seniors are worried that things are going to change, that they're going to lose their benefits, that the age of retirement is going to rise, and it's not fair. It's not fair. It needs to be there for us. But how do we fix that problem? It's tricky. I think that we have to have some creative thoughts. We have to have some political courage, but I think the wealthy are going to have to pitch in a little bit more here. I see a lot of heads nodding. You know, we owe this. The reason Social Security was created was so that we wouldn't have the most vulnerable people in our population at risk at a time in their lives when they needed the help the most. We can't abandon our seniors.
Mr. Wied, I'm going to give you 90 seconds, but just so the group knows, this will be the final 90 seconds. We will not go back and forth on this question. We'll go to closing statements afterwards, but please address this question for 90 seconds.
Well, I'd love to have those conversations about health, and we'll definitely have to do that at some point, because I do believe that is the biggest issue, and we need to look to prevention of all of these chronic health issues. I would never allow for Social Security to not continue. That these are things that you paid into, you deserve it, and you should be getting those benefits, and that should not go away. We need, though, to continue to look at ways of reducing the cost on the side of the government and finding efficiencies within that system so that you can continue to get the benefits that you worked so hard for. So Social Security is a very big issue, but I will continue to protect that for each and every one of you. But again, from our government perspective, we continue to spend far too much on other things, and we need to reduce our spending at a big level, because our founding fathers never intended for us to pass on debt to the next generation like we continue to do. Our children are going to be left with $35 trillion, and again, it's growing every 100 days, $1 trillion. So my goal is to do like I've done in my business and in my life, and work through the budgets. And I think we need to have a single subject spending bill amendment in the House of Representatives so that we can actually have dispassionate debate about each spending bill. And then we will bring the spending levels down, which then would offer funds to keep this Social Security program going, again, that you deserve.
Well, we thank you both for your answers during this 8th Congressional debate. We very much appreciate it. We do want to wrap up the program. The hour went very quickly. We will give you each a minute for closing statements. We will begin with Dr. Kristin Lyerly.
Thank you, Tammy. As I said when we opened, I'm from this area deep. I am committed to Northeast Wisconsin, the people of Northeast Wisconsin. They're my family, my friends, my neighbors, my patients. I have a lifetime of public service for the people of Northeast Wisconsin, and it would be my absolute joy to serve as your congressperson in November, lame duck session. My opponent recently picked up public service. He is not a moderate. He is not an independent. He is not the change that you want to see in this district. He's a good man, and he's here tonight, and we're doing this, and just the fact that we're having this conversation, I think is really incredible. It's a step in the right direction, but I think the choice is clear.
Mr. Wied, you have 1 minute.
I think the big difference between me and my opponent is she attacks people. I attack problems. And I have a history of attacking problems in my life, whether it's my personal life, whether it's in my business. And that is not what we need in the House of Representatives. We have a polarizing House, we have a polarizing Senate, and we need people that will actually go in there that have proven records of solving problems. We ran a small business for almost 30 years, a business just like farmers and other people in manufacturing and so forth, many people that we work for. And I will take that pragmatic approach to Washington and work to solve the problems that we are facing here right now. For me, it's an honor of a lifetime, going from customer service to public service being my sole mission. And I guarantee you that I will give it everything that I have. My wife and I have done everything together, whether it's raising our kids, raising our family, and now we together are going to go into public service and do the right thing for everybody right here in this district. Thank you.
And we thank both of you, Dr. Kristin Lyerly, Democratic candidate for the 8th District, Mr. Tony Wied, Republican candidate for the 8th District. Thanks to our audience tonight. You were wonderful. Appreciate you being here. Once again, voting day, Tuesday, November 5th. We thank you for watching. This will be available at WBAY.com. I'm Cami Rapson with WBAY. Good night.